Next up, we've got one mod. Safwan said it fast, so you can't even tell if I'm saying it wrong. So the question is, what I don't understand is why do manufacturers keep on adding tech that takes away from the enjoyment of riding? With new modern tech like this and plus connectivity and so on, in my opinion, is too much and take away from, the focus away. Take the focus away.
I mean, what do you think, mate? That's philosophical. That's not necessarily just this bike, you know?
I think you can apply that to a lot of different things in terms of like modern cars, equipment, phones, anything that sort of, they add features that make your life easier. I would agree with one aspect of it, which is with new tech often also comes new updates, and updates are something that really do frustrate me because, they're supposed to make your life easier. And from computers and phones and things, when they start adding on an update every single time you boot the thing up, that really does get irritating. But when it comes to riding, and I've ridden, I think, the Tiger is probably the most advanced bike I've ridden in terms of like additional tech on it. I've never noticed it take away from any of my enjoyment at all. I mean, if it's really, really good, you shouldn't even notice it's there. That's the point.
Until you want it. Yeah. So like, let's say it starts raining. And you're like, where's the rain mode? And you switch it on, it's really good. And you're like, But even then, to be honest, mate, most of the bikes I ride, I just stick them in sport or street or something like that. And then even if it starts raining, I don't really use the rain mode. I almost like the consistency of knowing how the throttle feels. And then I know, okay, it's raining. I need to turn it a little less. But I think there's the kind of assumption with different modes, for example, that you will just ride the same. Like, let's say you're setting off on the lights and you give it like half a turn of throttle. If you do that in the dry, that's fine. And if you do that in the wet, but in sport mode, maybe it'll spin up. But if you put it in rain mode, you can still ride in the exact same way.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? And it will accommodate for that. Whereas I ride differently to that. I ride, as I think most people do, sort of with a bit of caution in those conditions.
I warm up into it, I think. So I want to feel what the bike's doing, to a certain degree. And it's only when my confidence sort of builds that I'll start pushing the envelope a little bit. I don't want to get on and just assume that rain mode and traction control is going to take care of me. I kind of want to feel it out a little bit. And same as what you're saying, really. I think it's more of a problem if you're going from a really techie bike that has a lot of things, a lot of rider aids. If you then got onto an older bike with none of that, then I think that would be more noticeable, and that's possibly a problem. But I've never really noticed it get in the way of my riding or my enjoyment of the bike when it's done properly. If it's like a really snatchy or, inconsistent ride by wire, then obviously that's going to detract from your day. But if they've done it well and you don't even notice that it's working under the surface, then it's never a problem for me.
I think that was an interesting comparison with like phones that you made. But the thing with laptops and phones and, smartwatches and all those things is that like the fundamental purpose of those is to make your life easier. And so more features just contributes to that. I don't think motorcycles are necessarily there to make your life easier. They're there to be engaging and fun. And so again, it comes down to what you ride for. If you ride a bike because it's the cheapest way to commute and you can cut through traffic, then more features like this might add to that easiness. But if you're somebody who rides purely for pleasure, then I agree, then perhaps less is more. And you've got basically a few options. If you never ever want any tech, just buy a simple bike. They do exist.
Yeah. And they're going to keep existing as well. They're always going to have a flagship with everything on it and then the simple one that's more affordable. Yeah.
Although probably I think we have to acknowledge that the simplest bikes in a lineup are still getting techier, I suppose. So it's fair enough they're common. But there generally is like a spec down version. Or buy a bike where you can switch it off. So with this Tracer 9, it's a great bike on regular roads. If you switch everything off, you can minimize a lot of the settings. You can switch off TC, you can wheelie it, you can, stick it in sport mode and choose what exact settings you want and leave it pretty manual. Quite often with semi-active suspension, you can set that to a manual setting as well and just have the convenience of adjusting it through the switch gear. I think the other thing as well is like maybe just if you're someone who does a bit of both, is having a couple of bikes. And I say that as that's a very privileged position to be in. But let's say you were thinking about, I don't know, everyone's budget's different. So I don't want to some people will spend 20, 30 grand on a bike. Some people spend a couple of grand on a used bike and they get good, cheap biking out of it. Maybe less. You can get bikes for 500 quid, So I don't want to sound like too removed from how much money people have. But let's say you got 10 grand, for example, you could easily spend 10 grand on one brand new bike, or you could get an 8 grand bike. Maybe it's like a year or two old, the same bike that you wanted with a few miles on it. Yeah. And then the remaining 2 grand, spend it on something very simple. And this is the kind of setup that I've kind of got at the moment. So I use the Tiger 800, which is not super techy, but it's got cruise control, heated grips, heated seats. It's got a few different riding modes, TFT dash. So it's reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's built for comfort and just getting around. It's got luggage. And that's what I ride if I've got to go up the motorway somewhere. And then I've got the SV650S, which is a couple of grand. It's a bit knackered, needs a bit of work. But I rode it back from KTM yesterday. I just dropped off the 890 Adventure from reviewing that. There's no ABS, no TC, no riding modes. There's not even a fuel gauge. It's got a low fuel light, but it's very simple. It's got a rev counter, speed.
Sure.
And then that's it. It's super simple. And riding that back across the Cotswolds after doing the same trip on the 890 Adventure, which is quite techy, there's as much fun to be had. And the fact that it doesn't have ABS means you're really looking at, is there a damp patch or is there some gravel or same for the TC. It's not got a lot of power, but, and so that maybe be my recommended approach. But I know that is not the financial situation that everyone's in. But I think there's something to be said for having something that's a bit raw and old school and knackered. It doesn't have to be knackered, but it's got a bit of charm to it.
Hopefully not, but yeah.
You remember when we rode the Norton Commando, you said it smelled a bit of petrol in a good way?
Yeah.
I think that about my SV.
But yeah, I was going to say, does it? I bet it does. I've seen the exhaust on that thing.
Yeah, exactly. It does smell a bit petrol-y. I don't know to what point it's good for it to smell a bit there's a threshold of how much petrol you can smell.
If it pops and bangs too much, then probably not great.